this video, I would like to get back to my SQL Server development. I'm kind of missing database development, so let's get back to some of the small tips that can be quite useful for a DBA or a database developer. In this video, I would like to show you how you can remove duplicate records in a SQL Server table. Usually these tables are massive, thousands or millions of records. So basically writing a code that goes through the records one by one is quite inefficient. So in this video, I would like to show you how you can get rid of duplicate records and clear your database table. We start by reviewing the SQL Server table with the duplicate records, and then we write a query that removes the duplicate records. The table that I created to go through this demo, I created it in SQL Server, and I tried to make it as odd as possible. So as you can see, there is field 1, field 2, and field 3. And there are a couple of duplicate records, and I actually took it to the next level and created two absolutely identical records without primary key. And the request is to get rid of all the duplicates so that the field 1 is unique. So if I have Toronto, Toronto, and Toronto, I want to remove this one, and I want to keep this one. So if I want to go, if I have Ottawa, 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 only the third record should be left. You may have noticed that table is not even normalized, so there is no primary key, and that's all we have. Now let's see how we can deal with that. This is SQL Server Management Studio, and this is the table that we have. So the very first thing that I may think of is that, you know what, there are not so many records. Let me just go through them and one by one delete them, but it's not really as easy. So think about this record. So if I select the Ottawa or this one and I try to delete, it says you're about to delete one row, and I say yes, and it doesn't, because SQL Server cannot really point to this record because there is nothing that uniquely identifies this record from the other record. So how can we take care of it? The very first thing that we need to do is to normalize this table. So basically we need to add a primary key field. To add a primary key, I right click on this table and I go to the design, and I add another field and I call it table ID of type integer, and I set the identity for this field to yes, and I just save it. And to make it even better, I can select it and I can say, okay, this field is a primary key. I close it, yes, and table is saved. Now if I just right click on the table and I say edit 200 rows, I can see there is actually a field that uniquely identifies each record. So at this moment, if I just delete this record, I can actually delete it. If I press delete, it will delete this record. But anyway, still there are some other records left that I need to get rid of them. To do that, I create a new query. So I click on new query and select all the fields from this guy, and I just run it. The first thing that I need to do, I need to find out which records they have more than one value for field 1, which is quite easy. All I need to do is say, okay, select field 1, comma, count of field 1, and I would say group by field 1. If I run it, it tells me New York has 1, Oakville has 1, but Ottawa has 2 instances and Toronto has 3 instances. So if I want to filter it for the groups that they have more than 1 instance, I can say having count of field 1 is greater than 1. I run it and it tells me Ottawa and Toronto have more than 1 record. Great. So if this is the case, I can get the ID of the records with more than 1 instance in the group. So I would say table ID, but because we didn't group it by table ID and I want to delete the records with the smallest number, I would say min table ID, so the smallest table ID, and I can say F5. So it tells me record 3 and record 1 are the records to be deleted. Now I have the ID in one single column. I can use it as a filter criteria, so I can say delete from this table where table ID in this query. So this query returns the smallest IDs of the records that they have more than one instance for the specified field. Now if I pass this list of IDs to a delete comment, to a delete query, it will hopefully delete these records. Let me run it. It tells me 2 rows affected. Let's see what is left in the table. Select all the fields from T_test. I select it, F5, and you see Oakville, Ottawa, New York are fine, but Toronto is still there. The reason is that we had more than one record, and this query only deleted the smallest record. So now if I run this query again, it again tells me 1 row affected. If I run it again, now there are no more duplicates to be deleted. Now if I come here, I'm quite clean and the table has only unique values for field 1. You may notice that you may need to run this query a couple of times. I mean, you can simply put it in a loop or you can modify the query, but for a cleanup job that probably you will do it only once, it's not really worth it. Thank you for watching. That was SQL Server, and I promise next video is going to be SharePoint.